I was serving in Afghanistan when my wife sent divorce papers in a cold email. She stole my money, my house, and moved her boyfriend in. But I had a plan, and by the time I was done, she lost everything she thought she'd won. My wife divorced me while I was deployed. I took everything she stole and more. My name is Paul, and I'm 42 years old, a staff sergeant with the 82nd Airborne Division. I'd been married to my wife Becky for 13 years, and we lived in a modest house in Spokane with our dog, Ranger, a loyal German Shepherd, who'd been with us since our early days. I was 4 months into my deployment in Kandahar, Afghanistan, when I got an email that ended my marriage. A cold PDF attachment with the subject line, "Let's be adults about this." Becky had filed for divorce, emptied our joint account, and moved her new boyfriend, Jeremy, into our home. She thought she'd taken everything from me while I was halfway across the world. But what she didn't know was that I'd prepared for this moment, and I was about to finish what she started in a way she'd never forget. Becky and I met in 2010 at a barbecue hosted by my Army buddy Jason in Spokane. I was home between tours in Iraq, taking a breather after a grueling deployment, and Becky was finishing nursing school, though she later switched to working as a receptionist at a dental office because it was less stressful. She had a bright smile, a quick laugh, and a way of making everyone feel at ease. We hit it off over grilled burgers and a shared love for classic rock, talking late into the night about our dreams. I told her about my life in the military, 15 years in the Army by then, a career I was proud of, and she shared her hopes of a stable, happy family. 8 months later, we were married in a small courthouse ceremony, with Jason as our witness and a diner breakfast to celebrate. We bought our house in 2014, a simple 3-bedroom with a small yard and a quiet neighborhood. It wasn't fancy, but it was ours, purchased through a VA loan in my name. Though I added Becky to the deed because that's what married couples do, share everything. My parents had passed early in our marriage, my dad from a heart attack in 2011 while shoveling snow, and my mom from lung cancer in 2014, despite never smoking. They left me a modest inheritance, enough to pay off our student loans and create a small cushion in our joint savings. I deployed 4 times during our marriage, Iraq twice, Afghanistan twice, and each time I came home, Becky seemed a little more distant, a little more restless, like she was playing a role she'd outgrown. In 2019, the cracks became impossible to ignore. Becky started getting irritated when I called during her girls' nights, which became more frequent. She'd talk about her friend Melissa, who divorced her husband and was living her best life, traveling and dating younger guys. Becky began making comments about how we didn't have much in common anymore. I loved my military life, the structure, the purpose, while she wanted a normal husband with a 9-to-5 job. I didn't sign up to be a military wife forever, she told me once after I mentioned possibly re-upping for another 4 years. I'm tired of being alone all the time. I understood her frustration, but the Army was where I belonged. I was good at my job, and people depended on me. I suggested counseling, but she brushed it off, saying we were fine and just going through a phase. Then came the late nights at work, the weekends away with friends I'd never met, the new clothes, and a gym membership she rarely used. She stopped asking about my day, started locking her phone with new passwords, and got defensive if I so much as glanced at her screen. I didn't confront her. I'm not the type to snoop or start fights. My dad taught me to think before I speak, to be sure before I act. But I wasn't blind. 6 months before my latest deployment, I started preparing for the worst, quietly, methodically, because my gut told me something was coming. I secured important documents, birth certificate, marriage license, house deed, in my name only thanks to the VA loan, and military benefits paperwork in a storage unit across town. I moved sentimental items there too, like my grandfather's watch and my mom's old silver jewelry, things that mattered. I also opened a separate bank account at a different bank, diverting a small portion of my pay there. Not enough for Becky to notice, but enough to give me a safety net if things went south. The night before I deployed to Kandahar, she hugged me at the airport and said, "Stay safe, okay?" Her eyes were dry, her tone flat, like she was saying goodbye to a coworker, not a husband heading to war. I should have known then, but part of me still hoped I was wrong. I was wrong. 4 months into my deployment, February 2025, I was in my bunk in Kandahar, the desert heat still lingering even at night, when my laptop pinged with an email. The subject line read, "Let's be adults about this." And the sender was Becky. The message was 3 sentences long. "Paul, I've filed for divorce. I've moved on, and I think it's best we part ways. The papers are attached." Attached was a PDF, 13 years of marriage reduced to a legal document. I opened our bank app and saw our joint account balance, $22.37. Our savings, $47,000 we'd built over years, was gone, transferred to an account I didn't recognize. Later, I'd learned she'd moved her new boyfriend, Jeremy, into our house, the home I'd renovated during my last leave, the place where Ranger slept at the foot of our bed. I read the email twice, closed my laptop, took a shower in the communal stall, got dressed for my shift, and said nothing to anyone. When I got back to my bunk that night, I replied with one word: understood. No argument, no begging, no threats. My bunkmate, Wilson, noticed something was off. "You good, man?" he asked, not looking up from his book. "Yeah," I said, my voice steady. "Just some stuff back home." He nodded and left it alone. Military guys know when to keep their distance. Truth is, I wasn't surprised. I'd seen the signs and I'd prepared. But knowing it was coming didn't make it hurt any less. What Becky didn't know was that I never start fights. I finish them. And I was already planning my next move. 2 weeks later, I was in the mess hall, eating a tasteless MRE, when my phone buzzed with another bank notification. Another withdrawal, $88,500, almost everything left in our accounts. I set my fork down, opened the app, and saw the damage. Our savings were completely gone, and the joint account was down to pennies. That night, I called our bank from the base phone center. The rep confirmed Becky had been moving money for weeks. Small amounts at first, then larger ones were starting the day after I deployed. I hung up, stood in the hallway, and watched guys around me laughing, calling their families, living their normal lives while mine burned to the ground. Wilson found me there. "Heard from Alvarez you look like you'd seen a ghost at dinner," he said. "What's up?" I don't usually share personal stuff, but Wilson had pulled me out of a bad spot in Kandahar once. I trusted him. "My wife emptied our accounts and moved her boyfriend into our house," I said. "Sent divorce papers while I was on patrol last week." Wilson didn't offer empty sympathy. He just asked, "What's your plan?" "Not sure yet," I replied. He nodded. "Let me know if you need anything." That night I couldn't sleep. I pulled out my laptop and logged into our home security system, something Becky had probably forgotten I could access remotely. The cameras showed a strange truck in our driveway, a man I'd never seen before walking Ranger, using my coffee mug, wearing my Seahawks sweatshirt, and there was Becky, laughing in the kitchen I'd renovated myself, her hand on his arm. Something shifted inside me. Not anger, but something colder, clearer. I closed the laptop, pulled out my phone and made a list. Called James, an Army buddy turned lawyer. Check VA loan terms. Contact my master sergeant about emergency leave. Review home refinance documents Becky had mentioned casually last year. Secure my military pension accounts. I didn't feel sad anymore. I felt focused, like I was planning a mission. This wasn't about emotion now. It was about strategy. At 0500 before my shift, I emailed James with the subject line, "Need legal help, discreet and urgent." His reply came an hour later. "Call me, secure line only." When I hung up from that call, I knew exactly what I needed to do. I didn't need to yell or threaten. I just needed to wait, watch, and let Becky's own actions become her trap. 2 months later, I was back on American soil. I didn't tell Becky I was coming home. No call, no text. I checked into a motel in downtown Spokane under a different name and met James at a diner 10 miles outside town. "You look like hell," he said, sliding into the booth. "Feel like it too," I replied. James handed me a folder. Everything we discussed, house deed, loan documents, bank statements, and this. He pulled out a separate paper. "Found something interesting. It's a refinance application with your signature on it, except it's not your signature." I looked at the document. Someone had tried to copy my signature, but the middle initial was wrong and the stroke pattern didn't match. "Becky did this?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. James nodded. 3 months ago, use the equity to pull out $330,000. Your signature is required since the VA loan is in your name only. So she forged my signature, took out a loan against our house, cleared our accounts, and divorced me, I said, the pieces clicking into place. Busy woman. It gets better, James said. She listed her boyfriend, Jeremy Ryan, as a co-applicant. He's got a record 2 DUIs and a fraud charge from 2019. I took a deep breath. What are my options? Several, James replied, but first you need to decide what you want. I thought about it. I want what's legally mine, and I want her to understand consequences. James smiled. Then here's what we do. The next day, I drove past our house. Jeremy's truck was gone, but Becky's car was in the driveway. I parked down the street, thought about confronting her, but stuck to the plan.
Instead, I went to the bank and met with the loan officer who'd processed the refinance. I showed him my military ID, my real signature on my driver's license, and the forged documents. His face went pale. "I'll need to report this immediately," he said. "I understand," I replied. "I've already filed a police report." That night, I got a text from Becky. "Who have you been talking to at the bank?" Jeremy said someone was asking questions. I didn't respond. The next day, I went to the county clerk's office and filed paperwork contesting the refinance due to fraud, registering a formal notice that no changes to the property could be made without my presence. 2 days later, Becky called, leaving a voicemail. "Paul, we need to talk. The bank called about the house. What are you doing? If this is about the divorce, we can discuss it like adults." Like adults, the same words from her email. I didn't respond. James called that afternoon. "They froze the refinance money," he said. "And there's more. Your wife's boyfriend has been driving your truck, the one in your name. He got pulled over this morning on a suspended license from those DUIs. They impounded the vehicle." "Good," I said. "He also had prescription pads from the dental office where Becky works. They weren't blank." I closed my eyes. She's been stealing prescription pads? Looks that way. The police are investigating. The next morning, I met with the bank's fraud investigator, Thompson, a short guy with tired eyes and a coffee stain on his tie. "This happens more often than you'd think," he said, spreading documents across his desk. "Spouse deploys, other spouse sees an opportunity. What happens now?" I asked. "We've frozen the funds from the fraudulent refinance, but there's a problem. Some of the money's already gone." "How much?" "About half, $164,600. I leaned forward. "Where did it go?" Thompson hesitated, then turned his computer screen toward me. "These are the transfers out of the refinance account." I scanned the list, multiple transfers to someone named Daniel Spencer. "Who's Daniel Spencer?" I asked. "Not my department," Thompson said, "but you should ask your lawyer to subpoena these records." I called James as soon as I left. "Daniel Spencer," he repeated. "Let me run a check." An hour later, he called back. "Got it." Daniel Spencer is a real estate agent, specializes in quick sales, cash deals. "She was planning to sell our house," I said, the realization hitting me like a punch. "Looks that way," James replied. The deposits were probably earnest money to get him moving on a listing. But here's where it gets interesting. Spencer has done business with Jeremy Ryan before. They've closed 3 deals together in the past 2 years. "So this wasn't just Becky leaving me for some guy," I said. "This was a planned operation." "Maybe," James said carefully. "I did some digging into Jeremy Ryan. He has a pattern. It gets involved with women going through divorce or with deployed spouses. 3 cases I found so far. Each time, the woman's home gets sold well below market value to one of Spencer's clients. Ryan gets a cut, then moves on. And Becky, she knew about this? Hard to say. Maybe she's a victim too, or maybe she's in on it." James had already contacted the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. This crossed state lines, involved military personnel and VA loans, making it their jurisdiction. That night, I got a text from Becky. "Paul, please call me. The bank is saying something about fraud and Jeremy got arrested for driving your truck. I don't understand what's happening." I stared at the message, then typed, "Who is Daniel Spencer?" She replied after a long pause, "I don't know what you're talking about." I wrote back, $164,600. Multiple transfers. House listing. No response for 10 minutes, then, it's not what you think. I turned off my phone and went to bed. The next morning, James called. FBI wants to meet. They've been investigating Ryan and Spencer for months. You're not the first, but you might be the case that breaks it open. I met with agents Patel and Donovan at their field office in Spokane. They recorded my statement, took copies of all the documents James and I had gathered, and confirmed Jeremy and Spencer's scheme targeted military families. Your case helps establish a pattern, Agent Patel explained. Shows intent, organization makes it a conspiracy. What about Becky? I asked. We're still determining her level of involvement, Donovan said. Did she ever mention financial difficulties? Pressure to sell the house. I thought back. She kept saying we were house poor, that we should downsize. I didn't see the need. Our mortgage payments were manageable on my salary. When did that start? Patel asked. About 6 months ago, around the time she must have met Jeremy. They made notes, then handed me a card. We'll be in touch. Don't confront your wife or Ryan. We need to build this case carefully. That evening, Becky texted, we need to talk in person. Meet me at Riverfront Park tomorrow. I showed the text to James over breakfast. Don't go, he advised. Nothing good can come from talking to her right now. I won't, I said, but I want to know what she's doing while she thinks I'm meeting her. We drove to our house at 9:30 a.m., parked across the street, and watched as Becky left at 9:45, heading toward Riverfront Park. 20 minutes later, a car with a real estate agent logo pulled up, Daniel Spencer. Jeremy came out to greet him, and they went inside. I opened my security app, showing James the live feed. Spencer was taking photos of our living room, Jeremy pointing out features. Should list by the end of the week, Spencer said. I've got a buyer interested already, cash offer as usual. How much? Jeremy asked. $420,000. We list at $470,000. They offer $420,000. Everybody's happy. What about the husband? Jeremy asked. Becky says he's causing trouble. Spencer waved dismissively. Military guys are all the same. They make noise, but they've got deployments, responsibilities. He'll take a settlement to make it go away. James recorded the feed, and I forwarded access to Agent Patel with a message, happening now. 30 minutes later, FBI vehicles surrounded our house. I watched from down the street as agents led Spencer and Jeremy out in handcuffs. Becky arrived at the scene, hands over her mouth, watching as agents carried boxes of documents from our home. Agent Patel called, got them on tape discussing the fraud scheme, conspiracy, wire fraud, attempting to sell property under false pretenses. We'll need a formal statement from you. And Becky? I asked. That depends on what she knew and on what you want, Patel replied. The federal case moved quickly. Jeremy and Spencer took plea deals implicating each other and several other conspirators in a 3-state operation targeting military families. Jeremy got 8 years for fraud, conspiracy, and identity theft. Spencer got 12. Becky maintained she knew nothing about the larger scheme, claiming Jeremy convinced her I was hiding money and planning to leave her with nothing. She said the refinance was his idea, she'd just gone along with it. Maybe that was true, maybe not. Either way, she agreed to a settlement, full restitution of the stolen funds, forfeiture of any claim to the house or my military pension, and a signed confession about the forgery. In exchange, I didn't press charges. The divorce was finalized 6 months after that email from Kandahar, no fault, clean break.
On the day the last paperwork was signed, Agent Patel called. We found evidence they've done this to 11 other military families. Your case helped us build the pattern. Those families might get their money back because of you. I sat on the porch of my rental apartment watching the sunset, thinking about those other families, other men who deployed, thinking their homes and marriages were safe, only to come back to nothing. A year later, I sold the house. Too many memories, too much betrayal in those walls. I used the money to buy a small cabin outside Missoula, Montana, 2 bedrooms, 10 acres of land, a creek running behind it, no neighbors for miles. I took early retirement from the Army after 20 years. I'd given enough. I got a dog, a German Shepherd named Scout, and started doing carpentry work for locals. It keeps my hands busy and pays the bills while my military pension covers the rest. Becky moved back to her hometown in Oregon, working at another dental office, starting over. I don't hate her anymore. I don't feel much about her at all. She made her choices and I made mine. One evening I got a letter from a woman in Fort Worth. Her husband was in the Navy, deployed when Jeremy and Spencer tried to run their scheme on her. The FBI had given her my name as part of the case. You don't know me, she wrote, but you saved her home. Thank you for fighting back when it would have been easier to walk away. I pinned the letter to my fridge, a reminder that something good came from all this pain. I hadn't planned on bringing down a criminal operation, I just wanted what was mine. But sometimes things work out in ways you don't expect. I'm finding my way forward, one quiet day at a time, building something new, something that can't be stolen or betrayed. What would you have done in my place? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories of betrayal and justice.